Hello, and welcome to Archvelder's Hacks with Archvelder and his amazing hacks. Now, in this video, I'm going to be talking about the Covenant abilities of Shadowlands. Before we get started, I would really encourage everyone to subscribe, as there will be a lot of new content very soon on this channel, and particularly in the next few days, I'm going to be releasing a guide to farming raw gold in Shadowlands. So, in Shadowlands, when you reach level 60, you're allowed to join one of 4 different covenants. The Kyrian, the nightfae, the Ravendraft, and the Necrolords. Each offer 2 main abilities which you can add to your class abilities. Now, each one of the covenant abilities is the same for all classes, so I'll discuss these first. The Kyrian ability, Summon Steward, is the least interesting, offering this owl servant which heals you and cleanses you of poisons and diseases. I just have to say here though that there is just something so brilliant about the concept of allowing players to have an anthropomorphic owl following them around in-game playing a trumpet. The nightfae, by contrast, have a very interesting proposition in their soul shape ability. This allows you to turn into this visually stunning ethereal fox and move at increased speed and teleport every few seconds as you do so. This is functionally equivalent to blink or displace a beast. So from the point of view of exploitation, anything you can do with blink you can do with this. For the benefit of non-majors, I should explain that blink sometimes, particularly in legacy content, allows you to bypass barriers that you couldn't otherwise, and this can lead to PvP or PvE advantages, and is one of the very simplest exploration tools. Now, this doesn't really create any new possibilities for exploiters, but it does mean you can potentially create interesting synergies with other abilities that belong to classes other than mages and druids. It should also be added this potentially creates the possibility for some very fast speedrunning approaches, combining class abilities such as Monk or Demon Hunter's Fell Rush and Infernal Strike, especially with optimized gear sets. This in turn suggests that farming legacy content with lots of downtime between bosses could well be revolutionized. The Ravendraft ability, Door of Shadows, is probably the most obviously exploitable Covenant ability, since it allows the player to teleport up to 35 yards with the use of a target reticle. I know in Mythic Plus circles there is some discussion about whether this will be a mandatory talent because of its boss or trash skipping potential. The thing about Door of Shadows is that its exploit potential is so obvious it is difficult to believe that Blizzard don't know about it, and consequently will ignore most of what people do, regardless of whether similar abilities used right now might be considered exploitative. Door of Shadows has some potential for terrain exploitation in battlegrounds. However, offhand, I can't think of a single instance in which it could be used where some other ability could not. There is no way Blizzard can possibly prevent Door of Shadows being used for terrain exploits without removing the ability altogether. So I tried Door of Shadows out for exploration purposes, and you can do a lot of fun stuff with it. For example, in Burning Crusade era Hellfire Citadel, you can break out of the instance very quickly using the method I'm showing here. This is an exciting development for explorers, but before Blizzard get too concerned, in truth, while Door of Shadows can make exploration easier and accessible to more classes, it doesn't actually do anything that can't be done by a competent explorer using other relatively well-known methods. Indeed, there's a BFA essence which allowed you to do much the same thing with slightly less range. You can get out of Ivashara here using the door, but the same thing can be done with a variety of other methods again. For example, you can get on this ledge with Warrior Heroic Leap, Warlock Gateway, and clever druids can use a combination of Wild Charge and Summon Treants to access this area. What Door of Shadows does quite well, however, is level the playing field, giving every class an opportunity to participate. It's worth mentioning that Door of Shadows allows you to bypass any instance portal. Moving on to the Necrolords now. The Necrolords have a shield ability which effectively adds 20% to your health. This is kind of interesting because shields are one of the few remaining abilities in Warcraft which are not dynamically updated. They are snapshot from your stats at the moment of the spellcast. Moreover, they survive through zone changes. This is to some extent exploitable. Say you have some means of stacking health very high. Then you can use the Shield Covenant ability based on your temporarily very high health pool. And then you can take it into a raid or other competitive instance and be invincible for 2 minutes. Note this works even if the ability you use to raise your health pool initially doesn't survive through zone changes. Now, the secondary abilities of the Covenants depend on the class you're playing. The majority of these are fairly uninteresting DPS increases of some sort, at least uninteresting from the perspective of the player looking for an angle. I'm not talking about generic game design or anything like that. I'm going to run through the exceptions now. First, let's talk about the Rogue's Necrolord ability, where you impale a spike on your opponent. This is an interesting ability Blizzard have been messing around with forever. There's an NPC in Wrath of the Lich King's Halls of Reflection with a similar ability. It deals a certain amount of continuous damage that goes on forever, unless the target dies or is healed to full health. Now, this leads to an exploit that has existed in one form or another for a while now and applies to any damage over time spell which has an infinite duration. If you apply a damage over time effect to something like a target dummy which cannot die, then you get some benefit from that damage over time, such as healing. My video Invincible Warlock Raids Orgrimmar is a good example of this, where I dot up all the target dummies in Orgrimmar with Warlock Corruption, which when talented had infinite duration, which when combined with Leech Gear allowed my Warlock to heal up to full HP every few seconds. In response to that video, Blizzard scaled the dummies up to the player's current level, dramatically reducing the amount of healing the dummies would give you. You can do the same thing with the Bone Spike Covenant ability, but the amount of healing with the dummy scaling to your level is quite limited. Rogues have a talent which gives them 12% leech, but even when applying the spike to every target dummy in Stormwind, I was only getting a couple of % health regeneration per tick. You can do better than this by acquiring better gear and more leech. The gear Blizzard give you on the public test realm is actually pretty bad for some reason, but even then this is going to be more of a percentage play than something truly game breaking. Another ability briefly worth mentioning is the Death Knight's Abomination limb. That's from the Necrolords. This acts like a kind of cross between Death Grip and Ursol's Vortex. It actually pulls NPCs and players into itself. If you look at my Death Knight guide, you'll see that there are a number of ways to exploit this to devastating effect by entrapping players or forcing them off the edge of a sheer drop. The next ability I'm going to discuss is the Kyrian Hunter ability, Resonating Arrow. Now, this is a really interesting ability. The history of this is really fascinating. Literally every expansion Blizzard released some broken hunter ability which goes straight through walls, and people on Mythic Plus complain when they accidentally shoot a mob on the next level up in a dungeon and pull every single mob in the instance. Blizzard now seem to have actually introduced this glitch into the game as a formal ability. Resonating Arrow works like this. When you use the ability, you get a targeting reticle on the ground. I don't know why Blizzard keep using target reticles for everything. They're really clunky. I bind literally every ability like this to a macro with the add cursor function. They should just make that the default option. The targeting reticle allows you to bypass line of sight. I'm guessing they wanted something which would allow you to shoot through pillars in Arena, and didn't think too much about the PvE interaction. There's just one more Covenant ability I'm going to cover, and that's the Ravendraft Monk ability, Fallen Order. Now, this opens a portal which produces spectral monks to fight for you. What interested me about this is that it can be combined with the monk's Storm, Earth and Fire ability. This isn't exploitable in the conventional sense, but I have noticed this type of ability is quite confusing to other players in PvP. Even just using the mage's mirror images, which provide you with only 3 doppelgangers, I can capture a flag in a resource battleground 40 to 50% of the time in plain view of the other team. When you look at the possibilities with Fallen Order and Storm, Earth and Fire, there is just this massive opportunity to confuse players. Yes, you can identify the player with target nearest player, but that doesn't work very well if there are other players in the mix, and you can't tell whether they're in range or in front of or behind you. As an extreme example, I experimented, as you can see here, with a Mechanome, which has yet another cloning type ability called Hyperorganic Light Originator, in addition to Fallen Order and Storm, Earth and Fire. So there's the video. If you liked it, why not subscribe? And if you really liked it, then all the secrets that are too hot for YouTube I know of can be obtained by signing up to my Patreon. There's a specific glitch that is going to be absolutely invaluable at the start of Shadowlands and make a fortune from gathering early on. Thanks for watching. This has been Archvalder.